All right, so welcome to the 5 a.m. grind. Aris, how's it going?
It's going great. How's it going with you?
Not too bad. Not too bad, trying to make the most of winter months. It's been a mild winter so far in Toronto.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
We've had no snow. I mean, we've had snow, but it's
Very
nothing
little.
on the ground.
Yeah, very little. It's been an interesting
Yeah, it keeps
winter
melting.
for sure. COVID, mild winter,
You know,
etc.
the other day, I think it was minus 10, or it felt like minus 10 Celsius for our Fahrenheit friends in the States, but minus 10. And I was thinking about it. I was like, oh, this is pretty cold. But I realized we hadn't had that many days that are minus 10.
It's so true.
We'd have like at least like one that's like minus 30 by now.
Yeah, we would have had a couple of those really cold snaps.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, so I thought for this week's podcast, we'd talk about the topic of learning. So when do you stop learning in life? And I had a few questions I'd like to cover, as we do always. Those questions are, did you stop learning after school? How do you keep learning?
Mm-hmm.
How do you find things you'd like to learn? Is institutionalized learning important? And what's the best teacher? School or experience? So let me ask you the first one. When did you stop learning after school? What did you find out after you graduated? I'm sure you were relieved, but did you stop learning?
I think it was the opposite. I think I properly started learning after graduating.
I was going to say the same thing. I think I started learning properly after school. Yeah.
Because it was like, I think in school, it's like there's a lot of like, you go first day of class, there's a syllabus that everybody gets.
Yeah.
And now you're going to have to read these articles and books and whatever. And then they tell you what you have to do. And sometimes you're so caught up in doing it.
Right.
You don't really understand why you're doing it. And even if you do, you don't have a pragmatic, real world understanding of how this applies in real life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So.
I think the thing that happens in school, at least with me, this was my experience. I think I went through high school memorizing a lot. I did that in university a bit too, right? Just memorizing stuff, not truly understanding the concepts or understanding the real world application of what it was that I was learning. And you're right. I only learned how to learn after school.
Yeah.
Right? Which is funny.
And I felt like during school, I was not like, I had a hard time memorizing, man.
Oh, yeah?
It was not that I was a bad student. My grades weren't that high. I'm not going to lie about that.
You did make it to a school that required high grades.
Relatively high grades, yeah. But like, it's like, but once I got into undergrad, I don't know, like my grades weren't the highest. And it wasn't because I don't think I was necessarily the dumbest person. I'm not saying I'm the sharpest either, but my kind of issue was when I would read something, I'd be like, one good example is when they're telling us like WACC and EBITDA and all this these
finance
equations, that we're supposed to memorize, right? So it's like from a theoretical point, you could be like, all right, well, weighted average cost of capital is like basically how much a company borrows funds for, what their costs are, right? For borrowing capital, and what are the different ways and all this other stuff, and the risk going up. That's fine. But that's a very microscopic understanding of what that is. How does it really work? How do you really get funds for a company in real life? You don't really know that, right? It's not that clean. It's not like you can just go to the market and whatever. It's so much has to do with business dealings, who you know and how you negotiate different things. True. And it's not down to a science where, oh my God, now they got more debt, so there's more risk. It's a lot of it is just relationship building and being able to kind of ask for what you want, as opposed to taking what you
negotiating all that stuff.
So a lot of it is like based on who's in more of a position of power, when there's a lot of power dynamics involved.
The real world is messy.
It's not as clean. And then so that was like, I would not be able to memorize it because there would be all these questions that went unanswered, which is why I felt like I had a difficult time.
Got it. Now you also did post-grad, so you went to law school. Did you find that your experience there was different than what your experience in undergrad and university?
It was very different.
It was very different.
It was very different because I think
why was it different? And what
law school is more academic, though. In a lot of ways, I felt like business school was still a little bit more pragmatic in that they were teaching you skills on how to present, and they're putting things in your mind, like who your audience is and how to kind of really bring home certain ideas. In law school, a lot of it was reading through appellate cases that were often very old, but at the same time, they were like lawyers are not. Very few lawyers go into appellate court and make any kind of real appellate decisions. Appellate, as in, especially the appellate court cases that we were reading through in law school. I went to law school in the States, so it was federal court appellate decisions. So there's very few even state courts. So a lot of it was not, it was like 75% of lawyers are transactional lawyers. So they're not going to be looking at any of that.
Yeah, yeah.
So and then out of the 25%, there's a very few who can even go into appellate. So in terms of they have like real ability.
Yeah.
So it was something that I really didn't understand. Now going back now, when I look back at it, right, with the experience I have, I feel like I can make a lot more going to law school and business school.
Yeah, just because of the experience that you have.
Yeah, because if I'm going to law school, I'm not going to be reading those cases to learn how the case itself or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really, now I understand that I need to know how to write effectively, how to construct an argument effectively, instead of blindly trying to figure out this is the recipe for a good argument.
Yeah. No, got it. So let's move to the second question then. How do you keep learning? Well, whatever you find. How do you keep learning?
Firstly, go for it. Go.
I was gonna say, like, I think what happened with me is once I graduated, like you said, I really learned how to learn after school. So I took a couple of designations. I did my CPA, I did my CFA. So I had this thirst for learning. So I did 2 more designations. And then after that, you and I both did this. We both started reading profusely, just books out of interest, just interest. If we were interested in investing or finance, we read books about that. If we were interested in, behavioral economics, we started reading about that. I think for me as well, as like I sort of went over before with some of you listeners who have probably listened to our previous podcasts or episodes, I made a few key career changes. Because I went from accounting to finance and then now into tech. And those changes, the reason why I was able to make them was because I was able to sort of take my skill set, learn finance, some other additional skill sets on the side through books, through speaking to people, taking a couple of courses, and then sort of leverage that to be able to break in those other fields, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you might not have all the qualifications, but in today's day and world, it's almost inexcusable for you not to know something because you can find it almost anywhere, right? Like on the internet, Google it, whatever it is. Yeah. If you're really trying to break into an industry, nothing's stopping you except yourself. You can go learn about the industry, become accustomed to its practices, understand the knowledge base that you need, and then break in.
And how fast things are changing. Yeah. I don't think no longer is it all right for you to memorize a couple of books in undergrad and then use that for the rest of your life. Yeah. It was never okay.
Yeah.
But it's like 6 months ago, the business environment was very different from now. So you need to constantly be learning. Yeah. And so that you can constantly be even relevant in the industry that you're working
that you're in. I actually wanted to underscore this. I was going to talk about this, hit this point later, but I'll do it now since you mentioned this. But it is so important. Technology and disruption is happening at an increasingly fast pace, right? For you to think, and it's funny how people do this. I sometimes thinking about it and you're like, wow, people actually do this. And that is, they look at industries changing, businesses being crushed and decimated because of disruption and technology. Yet they say my career can be stagnant and I just have to do this one job my entire life. How does that happen? Yeah. Industries are absolutely getting decimated and your career isn't going to change. It is. Yeah. You're going to be forced to adapt. I think our biggest skill set for our generation will be our adaptability, the ability to learn something new, rebrand yourself, pivot, and keep going, right?
And I think we talked about this in one of the earlier podcasts where if you're starting off on something for business, for example.
Yeah, we did it for business, true.
Right, you're only going to plan, you're not planning any moves. If you become a bit of a pro, you're planning 4 moves, right? 5 moves ahead. But if you're a master, it's somewhere 10, 15, 20 moves ahead. So even in your own career, if you want to be a master of your own career, whether it's a business or your own career, your job, you need to figure out what is it going to be looking like 6 months down the line? What is it looking like a year, 5 years? Where is this going? Can this be replaced? Because in the coming time, here's another good example. from a lot of studies, a lot of people felt that India was going to be growing to the same level as China is.
Yeah.
Because they have a better demographic structure, right?
English
And
speaking, all
English
this stuff.
speaking,
Yeah.
but and it's cheap labor,
Mhm.
right? And they may be able to use the same model that the Chinese did to get into the more industrialized nations. Now, if you leave alone the issues that they have with infrastructure and all of that, the fact that cheap labor is no longer a way for a nation industrialized, because as we move into automation,
Yeah.
a robot is going to be working longer
Yeah.
than a cheap
Labor. Yeah.
employee,
It's
labor,
true.
and
True,
they're
yeah.
not going to complain. They're not going to have days off.
Yeah, yeah,
And when
yeah,
they make
yeah.
a mistake, you fix it, and it keeps going. Type
It just
of
keeps
thing.
going. Yeah. Error rate slower, all this other
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
So like and as these the automation kind of movement increases, a lot of these jobs are going to disappear. So the fact that India, and this is just to show you how quickly things are modernizing. The boat for a nation to industrialize off the back of cheap labor has sailed.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
now you have to move towards an economy that's more robust, more resilient. Your labor force has to be sharp, clever, and has at least a basic level to acquire skills fast.
Yeah.
That's it.
Agreed.
It's not having a skill now that matters. It's how fast can you acquire a skill that matters.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, I like that a lot. How fast you can acquire a skill. And I'd say that example you just cited is not unique to just China and India. It's happening in
Yeah.
the West as well,
Yeah.
right? Even jobs, let's say some jobs like bookkeeping, etc., those are already starting to be
Yeah.
automated as well,
Yeah.
right? You're increasingly, as a human being, I think you are going to be responsible for the stuff that is more subjective,
Yeah.
that is sales oriented, right?
Yep.
Because a lot of the data entry stuff, the process stuff, the repeatable stuff, all that stuff can be automated. Eventually it will be. Some of it might not be today, but eventually I'm sure some of it could be. So yeah, I think you need to be able to relearn, repivot yourself, adapt,
Yeah.
like you said, and yeah, acquire skill sets quickly.
Another good example.
Yeah.
And I know you're about to move to the
Yeah,
next
yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah. No, go ahead. I think we're answering some of the next ones, so whatever. It's totally fine, man. We don't need to stick to a structure.
But like the thing was, the legal field had the same issue.
Yeah.
So I think if you went back even 20, 30 years ago, if
Right.
you wanted to write a will, you went to a lawyer. If you
Yeah.
wanted to apply for any kind of immigration matter, you went to a lawyer. If you did a lot of things, it was people were like, all right, I will go to a lawyer because they know how to do this, and it's for good reason. But increasingly now, you have do-it-yourself shops, right? You can write your own will for $99. You could never have thought of that like 20, 30 years ago. You went to a lawyer who charged at least $700, $800, $1,000, all right? I don't even know if it was $700, $800. I'm pretty sure it was more than $1,000. The prices have been forced to come down as you have all these do-it-yourself shops, because everybody in the economy knows that I can Google this, figure it out myself, and have a decent chance of doing it right.
Yeah.
I don't recommend this to everyone, not because I'm a lawyer, but because I do feel like there's situations where you're not paying the professional for the stuff that you can understand. You're paying them for the stuff that you can't understand and you don't know exists.
Yeah.
That's a whole different kind of area. But before, my kind of what my point is that before, that mindset wasn't there that I could do it myself.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. So let's move on here. How do you find things you'd like to learn, and how do you keep learning? Yeah, how do you like find things you'd like to learn? For example, I'd say for me,
Yeah.
how do I find things that I'd like to learn? It's just like I said, when I made those moves, going from one industry to another, in order to market myself and sort of tell people that I have the skill set that is required to
Yeah.
work in finance from accounting, because I started my career in accounting. You're just like, you know what, I want to break into this industry, so let me learn some skills that are needed in that industry, right? And in today's world, it was easy. Yeah, I just took a couple of courses, I read a few books, talked to some people, networked, and then I broke into the industry eventually. So I think that's exactly how it is. Because and I'd like to cover this particular topic in a separate podcast. It's just about sales and how that applies to your own marketability, but we'll cover that some other time. But yeah, I'd say, you know what, if you are driven to achieve something, break into an industry, that's how you find things to learn. How about yourself? There are things you do to, I don't know, keep yourself more relevant to customers or to your
Yeah.
clients?
I mean, for me, it's more of an exploratory kind of passion.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the things
Yeah.
is, even if my business is perfectly fine,
Yeah.
my one of my biggest things is, how can I make the experience better for my clients
Okay.
coming in?
Yeah.
Whether it's I want them to ask less questions because I know what they want right away, and I present it to them before they ask me that question, or like just my entire workflow for a client is done in a way, or the firm's workflow is done in a way where everything is just so straightforward and it's making it easier. So that is not something that then I'm only learning about law, right? Because it's more looking at psychology, it's looking at operations, it's looking at marketing, it's looking at technology, it's looking at so many different things. So now I'm going on a hunt to see what's happening in different industries to answer this question,
Mm-hmm.
and how can I cross-pollinate something from like tech and something from like manufacturing and bring that together to apply it into a service delivery kind of
Yeah.
application. So it's like you're looking at, and this is what I enjoy. I don't necessarily like reading something and memorizing it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
looking at how it could be applied in different areas that
Yeah.
it hasn't been applied yet. And you don't have that answer. You can only kind of guesstimate. You can kind of think about it, daydream a little bit,
Yeah.
go in, and then you apply it. And if it doesn't work, that's when you like start tweaking it.
Mm-hmm.
And this brings me to one other thing.
Yeah.
though.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that daydreaming is a form of knowledge, and it's a use of your brain muscle that people don't really understand how powerful it is. Because when you're daydreaming or when you're thinking, you're applying things that no other creature on earth can do, that doesn't exist, into something, and you're trying to then bring that into reality.
Yeah.
That's a form of knowledge that everybody should be, you should be daydreaming more.
Like reflection.
Yeah,
Reflection,
yeah.
as you're trying to say. No, I agree with that. I think as well, especially when I read books now as well, what I tend to do now is read a chapter and then just stop and ask yourself, like, why was this written? What was the key message out of here, and try to boil it down. And I really like this concept. Try to boil down concepts that you're learning such that you can teach them to a 6-year-old, right? Because essentially that's what it is. I don't care what field you work in, however complicated it is, unless it's like, I don't know, surgery or like nuclear physics or something insane like that. But even then, I could argue that you could boil down the essence of what you're doing into a few keywords. That to me is true mastery about whatever it is that you're learning, understanding, pursuing, whatever.
I mean, I think to your point where even if it's like surgery or whatever it is, the point is of that exercise, which I mean, I'm a big believer of it as well, is to take a complex notion and try to boil it down to what is the one most important part. You're prioritizing the knowledge and taking that out of the complexity and understanding this is number one, this is number two, this is number three.
Yeah.
They all come together, and there's a depth of perception that you get when you reflect on it, but you can't necessarily explain an entire web to a person.
Yeah.
They need to put in their own time to understand that web.
Yeah.
But in order to get them started or explain a concept that you understand well, you're able to prioritize from everything the one point that's most important.
Yeah, absolutely true. Like the key few variables of
Yeah.
what is quite really important, right? I think simplifying is really a skill set that is very underrated in life, but it's a skill set that is so important. Simplifying, and the other one I was going to say is communication.
I mean, in order to simplify and then communicate it effectively, you need to, but people don't see that, right? It's like nowadays you read something and then I guess you start like just regurgitating whatever the heck you had.
Yeah. You're impressed by complexity and stuff like that. So funny. So the other question I had to cover today was, is institutionalized learning important? So institutionalized learning, by that I mean school, university. What do you think about that? What's your take?
I would say to some extent, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
so do you put a lot of credibility in like degrees, designations, that sort of stuff?
No, I don't. But the issue is that is yes and no. When you see somebody who's gone through a good school or something like that, or done something challenging, what it kind of shows me is a lot of other things like resilience, aptitude, dedication, all of those things. Those things, like, that's not the only way to show it, though, right?
Yeah.
There's other means in showing those characteristics. Unfortunately, there's very few other ways people display those characteristics other than school for the general population.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those people who are dedicated to something usually will go to school first,
Yeah.
right? But that's not the only way. And I think that's just because our society is made up.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I think, you know what, I have a couple of perspectives on this. I think institutionalized learning, school in general, like you said, it's not really a way to say whether or not this person is actually smart. It's like, oh, they've been there, they show resilience, they show they can work hard, they can plan well, they can get through a degree or something like that,
Yeah.
right? But ultimately, if you look at very successful people, there are people who have degrees and there are people who don't have
Yeah.
degrees, right? Mark Zuckerberg is a dropout. Bill Gates is a dropout. And they're not just, I know these two are some of the famous ones, but there's so many. You can just go through the
Yeah.
billionaires list and I can tell you, there's so many people who will tell you, I sucked at, Ray Dalio himself said, I wasn't good at math. I sucked at school. And he
Yeah.
manages the biggest hedge fund,
Yeah.
right? And it's a quant hedge fund at that. So go figure. It doesn't equal, like,
Yeah.
correlation doesn't equal causation. And it's the same thing with school as well. It doesn't mean anything. Like, you could be a bad student, you could suck in school, then be very successful.
Yeah.
That doesn't prove anything. I think school usually, like high school, university, I'd say it's a way for kids to mature. Is why kids really go there and acquire some skill sets, you know? Like, you go to high school because you're still maturing, you don't know anything. You go through university, it's a maturing process as well. You're figuring it
but
out.
like, statistically, they say that if you're around people your age,
Yeah.
you're going to mature less than if you're around people. So the whole grade schooling system is counterintuitive.
It is.
Plenty
of
like
plenty of
the
flaws.
maturity. Like, I mean, if you go back 50, 100 years ago, man, everywhere around the world, you matured by 12.
Yeah.
You had to, like, people say, oh, child labor because if somebody's going to work at 12. 12-year-olds, like, in a lot of areas, they were starting families at 12, you know?
Yeah,
that's
way
how
back
mature.
way back. Yeah.
Like, their mindset is completely
I
different.
guess life expectancies were
Yeah,
shorter too
yeah.
and stuff.
But then
so
it
it's
just
very
shows
different.
that we have that aptitude inside
ability.
of us at 12,
Yeah,
and we're
yeah.
stretching out childhood until 40.
Yeah,
now.
we are stretching it out as a society. We definitely are. Yeah, people aren't starting their careers until like their 30s or whatever it is.
Yeah, now people are getting
Which
more
is
serious at
late.
30. Where, like, if you went 10 years ago, it was like at
Like
their
our
20s.
parents was in their 20s. Yeah. No, it's definitely being
So it's
stretched out.
Keep being pushed forward. So.
Yeah. That's interesting
The
stuff.
one thing, though, I feel like the school does teach you,
Yep.
and you should be able to learn this on your own.
Yeah.
But just like you said, communication skills. If I get an application in and I see that, like, the person's well spoken or well written,
Yeah.
they're able to articulate themselves effectively, those applicants are always from a good school.
Yeah.
That doesn't
Yeah.
mean that, like, they have to be, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm looking for good communication skills.
Yeah.
I'm looking for good communication skills and aptitude. If you've got that, that's it.
Yeah.
right? It's game done. If you can, like, if I can communicate something to you, you can figure things out, and you have the aptitude to figure things out yourself on your own as well.
Yeah.
Right? That's all I need.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
it just turns out that a lot of these applicants that have both of those are coming from a good school.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. The thing about even interviews that say at a lot of good schools and companies is that once you're into the interview room, you're part of that short list of candidates.
Yeah.
It's not an argument over whether or not these people can do the job. All of them can, right?
Yeah.
They're shortlisted because they have the chops to
Yeah.
do the job,
Yeah.
right? Now it's just a matter of, do we fit with this person? How are they like, when they
Yeah.
communicate? Can they sell? Do they get along with people? Are they friendly? It's the EQ stuff that you're
Yeah.
evaluating. It's no longer the IQ, right?
Yeah.
You know the person can do the job, or they can learn. They have a
Yeah.
desire to learn. They
Yeah.
have the hunger.
Yeah.
So it's more like EQ type of stuff.
I mean, I think for most jobs, unfortunately, if you don't have the aptitude, you need to have the experience.
Okay.
Because the experience then will make up for the aptitude. But I will always, always, always
Yeah.
pick an individual with aptitude over an individual with experience.
Got it. Interesting. All right. So let's spend a bit of time on this one. What's the best teacher, experience or school?
Right now, I would say
And I'm
experience.
gonna make okay. I was gonna make it tough for you and just pick one, but okay, you chose experience. So tell me why. Why is experience the best teacher?
I mean, so it's such a loaded question because
Yeah.
it really depends on your mindset. If you're somebody who doesn't give up, who just gets knocked down and
I
gets
see
back
what you're
up,
saying. It
all
depends
right?
on the personality of
Yeah.
the. Yeah.
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 So I would say experience, right? Because you're going to learn because you just want it so badly.
Yeah.
But if you're somebody who is not of that mindset and you're maybe a bit more like you want to feel good, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. Well, actually that is wrong. I don't agree with that, right? But difference of opinion, whatever, right? But if that's your mindset, then school, because that they will, like in school, they're cradling you to learn and they kind of give you little negative like there's little pushes in terms of like tests and assignments to get you to keep learning.
Yeah.
But there's nothing real on the line. There's a perceived like, oh, if I got an F
on this
like, I don't
test,
know what's
it'll
gonna
be the end
happen,
of the
but
world, blah, blah,
yeah.
blah. Yeah.
But there's nothing real.
No,
right?
no, like the stakes are much lower.
Yeah, like with experience, like if you start a business
Like
and you
stakes
put
are
your life
much
savings
higher.
in there,
Yeah,
if you don't figure it out,
Yeah.
you're out on the street.
Yeah. And I'll go back to, I think what you were saying is experience plus drive is like equals formula for success in my mind. Experience and drive. Like if you are very driven,
Yeah.
right, eventually you're going to figure it out. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever it is that you're doing. Yeah, you might have some failures, you might hit some roadblocks, but I think eventually you'll figure it out. I'm also, I was saying this, I was also thinking about the stat that says, on average, though, they say a lot of university grads tend to do okay. They tend to do better than someone that doesn't have a university education. I don't know where I got this stat.
Well,
but
that's
it's a
because they're
stat.
mildly more hardworking.
Mildly more
maybe,
hardworking. Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah,
possibly.
It's true.
Than
Yeah,
other
yeah.
individuals. I mean, I don't always agree with that, man. Because
Yeah.
if you look at it, right, I feel like a lot of, for example, individuals in trades, mechanics, they're making more money than
yes,
MBAs,
yes,
man.
yes, they definitely are. Yeah.
And so, like, all
It's-
of, like, MBAs or whatever, they're like, I
Oh,
got
yeah,
this
I
degree.
got this degree.
and
I
I got
can do this
a
job.
manager
Yeah.
or whatever.
Meanwhile, the plumber is crushing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then it's like,
Yeah,
well, I didn't get the next promotion because my boss didn't like me.
Yeah.
The reality is if you are sharp, if you have the aptitude, if you have the experience, if you have the EQ, your boss is compelled to promote you because at the end of the day, an organization is a political environment.
Yeah.
Your boss wants a promotion as well. And they want to be around people who aren't just like they're drones that are going to show up 9 to 5. They're dependable in showing up 9 to 5 and doing the work. The boss knows that this guy is I need him next to me because this is how I get to the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that is a constant learning. You have to constantly be learning to figure that out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because even like forget about business.
True.
I know I'm just
No.
this is
Go ahead,
insane like a segue. But anyways, like it's like even the individuals who are like in companies, who are entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
You have to be sharp in order to run a business or a department, right? In a organization, you have to be sharp, pragmatic, constantly learning, right? It's not something I've been here 10 years, so therefore I've got a degree, therefore I should have this promotion. You really, and it's never, ever, ever like, oh, if it wasn't for my boss, if it wasn't for this, if it wasn't for that. Like, if you are valuable, right? Like, I know for myself, if I have a valuable employee, no matter what, I'm keeping that employee. Because you know what? This business may be tanking, but I'm going to figure out 5 other ideas, right? And I'm going to bring them in with me on that one because this person knows how to fight.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, the one thing I just I remembered right now of what you just said about the plumbers versus the MBAs. I think I read a quote somewhere, and I'm paraphrasing here, is that the Western society has made it such that the secretary looks down on the electrician while the electrician is making twice her salary. Right? That's how society's become, and it's funny, right? The secretary looks down at this person, yet this person makes twice as much as she does. He or she does, excuse me. All right. So interesting stuff. I think my answer to this question is very much along the lines of what you just said. Experience over school any day. School, again, very theoretical in nature, but it's not until you go into the real world, get hit hard, right? By experience, failing, making mistakes, that you definitely learn to, you sort of put that concept into reality as opposed to just being living or breathing on a book.
Yeah.
Right? It becomes very, very real.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Yeah. We'll end it there. So that's a podcast about learning.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
Lifelong learning. All right. Thanks for joining us. Have a good one.